What's up everyone, this is BigPowner, and today I'm going to be doing a retouch on the Archmage. I'm going to be covering some stuff that I figured I should cover. I did the initial build guide on this, and then I've only been playing the build for boss killing, and I plan to min-max it, but honestly, I haven't been messing with the gear because I've had no need. The peak DPS on my build is at 67 million, and I basically just use it for killing Awaken Rate Serious, um, really high quantity maps, tier 4 seeds, stuff like that. And the build's just so strong as it is, even without finishing. Like, I really need to finish my amulet. It's missing a stat. I've got a tier 5 energy shield on it, stuff like that. I need to slam my belt. There's stuff I still need to finish on this. I mean, honestly, my wand at this point is kind of crap relative to the amount of currency I have, the quality of items, that I have on my other character. But there's honestly just been no need because the build just has so much damage, and it does what I use it for so well, which is boss killing. This is what, at this point in the league, this build is really for, is for killing bosses. But I am going to give a map demo. Got a 128% quantity map beyond. It's a pretty a pretty good test map. The thing that I want to touch on, it's a big thing that I want to touch on, is there is a really stupid theory that obviously people have just taken very small amounts of information, which that information is basically just looking at their displayed damage, which is a horrible way to determine how much damage your build actually does. And because of them not understanding how the Archmage support works, and not understanding how the Indigan works, and not actually testing their theories, this has become something that I'm hearing constantly of how this build works. I actually know how this build works because I've done a couple hundred Awaken Rate Seriouses with this build at this point in the league. I've done a ton of maps. I played this build as my starter build, and I actually know how this build works. So the whole thing that is a big thing people are telling me or asking me about is should I not be casting my last brand because I'm losing damage? That is false. Your tooltip is showing that you have less damage, because if I cast twice, then I can cast another one, and then I cast it, and then it shows less damage. Why is it that it's doing this? People are assuming that it's just removing the damage off of all of these brands. This is completely false. The way the Archmage support works is based on the cost of the cast. It is adding number to number lightning damage to that brand cast. Where's the Archmage? You can read it right on the gem. Supported skills gain added lightning damage to 108% of mana cost if mana cost is not higher than the maximum mana that it could spawn. So your displayed is basically showing you a really bad calculation of what your damage is going to be. Like, relying on your tooltip DPS is a really stupid thing to do. You really have to be using path building or something like path building if you actually want to know what your damage is. A great example of this on another build would be my Blade Vortex. My Blade Vortex is around 10 million DPS, and yet my tooltip, before I start casting, is like something like 30,000 displayed or something like that, and it peaks out at like, I don't know, I think it goes up to a display of like 100 or 200k, something like that. But obviously this is way off from the actual damage that we are dealing, and the reason why is there's tons and tons of factors. So for instance, like, I'm using a Diamond Flask. The critical strike chance is completely ignored in your calculation for your displayed tooltip. And there's tons of things like this that are not calculated. For instance, I'm using Assassin's Mark. This is a massive boost to damage that is completely ignored. All of my spells, conductivity, my debuffs, my increases, all of this stuff is completely ignored by your tooltip damage. A lot of the things that are actually the biggest multipliers for your damage are completely ignored by tooltip damage. Tooltip damage, the only thing that this is good for, is if you understand what affects your displayed tooltip and you're just trying to get a guess of how much swapping an item, if it's only affecting things that are actually displayed on your tooltips, how much it's actually adding. The truth is, though, there's very few instances where we're changing an item that is only affecting our tooltip display DPS. So really, if you want to know how much damage a build is doing, you have to be using something like Path to Building. You need to learn how to use it. You need to understand how your build works so you can actually calculate, get a realistic idea of what your DPS is. Also, this is just going to completely debunk all of these theories. I have an Elder Kill video up. If the theory about, the third cast, because your displayed on your tooltip goes down by a bunch when you're not able to cast that you're losing all that damage. If that was true, that Elder Kill, under 2-minute kill of Elder, would not be possible. And why would it not be possible? Because the first cast DPS of my Storm brand is about 3.5 million DPS. But that's counting the boost that it gets from a 734 mana cost. So when I have no mana cost, it's actually going to be lower than that. So if that theory was correct, I would be having like a DPS of like maybe around 1 million. And 1 million DPS against Elder would be like the slowest. Like, it would be so slow, it would be painful. There's no way that I would be killing Elder that fast. Just plain and simple. And if you watch the video, every single time that I'm casting my brands, I'm casting till I can't cast anymore, which means I would always be in that zone where I would have no added lightning damage. That debunks the theory completely. So if anyone actually played it, if anyone actually tested this theory, like one time, they would clearly be able to see, hey, I am gaining damage by casting this a bunch of times. For myself, as someone that's killed hundreds of times, a couple hundred times, I've killed the tankiest character in the game, Awakener 8 Sirius, a ton of times. I know, because I can see on my third cast that the damage he is taking is drastically increasing. It is a massive, massive difference between the second cast and the third cast. Why is that? Because my third cast is adding a multiplier of 7,000 mana. That is absolutely huge, because you're talking about 35 times 24% increased spell damage. You're also talking about 108% number-to-number lightning damage. So 108% of 7,000 is what, like 7,500 number-to-number added lightning damage before it's multiplied. It's unmistakable. Yesterday, I tested on 2 serious kills using a control to see what a different DPS looked like, just to be 100% sure. I used my Blade Vortex build, which you can go calculate the DPS on that. It would be about, on the high end of my DPS calculation, it would be about 1/7 of my Archmage's DPS. My Archmage's DPS last was calculated at 67 million peak DPS. My Blade Vortex is about 1/7 of that. If the skill was not working the way it was, that would put my Archmage's DPS way, way, way below the Blade Vortex, which would mean that the Blade Vortex at around 10 million DPS would be killing the Cirrus way, way faster than the Blade Vortex. The Blade Vortex was so slow comparatively on the first phase that after the first phase I switched to my Archmage and killed the entire rest of the Cirrus in less time than it took me to phase him the first time on a 10 million DPS Blade Vortex build. It's not even close in comparison, like 7 times higher. It's absolutely 100% a completely false thing. And the way that I use this build is when I'm fighting a boss. If this was the boss, I cast 1 brand away, I cast 2 onto him, Then I pop Lavangas, which there's also a theory that Lavangas resets your damage and makes the brand damage nothing. No, it doesn't. If that was true, then these brands would have no increased damage. I can see a massive difference when I do this and cast both of my brands down, then use Lavangas, and while the Lavs is going, until he pops in, I spam the Wave of Conviction at no mana cost with the Lavangas up. I'm now out of the Lavs. And then as soon as he becomes targetable, he has the 2 highest DPS ones added. I triple cast 3 brands, and he gets massively hit with damage because that's my absolute peak damage. That's how I play it every single time. If either one of those theories were correct, those brands would be doing no increased damage, which 100% is false, because that would mean that my first brand would be doing more damage than my triple cast brands, which, try it yourself. Cast just 1 brand and watch the DPS on something. Then take and cast 2 more and watch the DPS go up. Very easy to prove. So now I'm going to talk about how you would be playing this build if you're trying to map with it. Honestly, this is not the best mapping build. I've said it from the beginning, it's very hard to play. If you learn how to play it, it can be a really good build, but it's never going to reach the map clearing speeds that a good mapper is. Its strength is boss killing. And, you know, the best builds, if you're specializing into bossing or mapping, every build is going to be better at one thing, and personally, I like to have a build that is super focused into doing each thing so that it does what it does really well, which, you know, if you can cheaply make 2 builds that do 2 things way better than any one build could do both, then that's a pretty sweet place to be in, and that's kind of what this build has been focused into and what I use it for. So when I'm clearing, triple cast, and then when I'm moving, I hit Lavangs and then use Recall. And then I'm ready for my next set of casts. So the entire time that I'm running around right now, I have no time. You can hear me spamming my recast. Anytime that a brand is able to come up, I am casting another brand, which would mean that this entire time I would have no added damage to any of my brands based on the theories that people are saying how this build works. Like, anytime that I'm able to recast, I'm casting. And why is that? Because whenever I recast, I'm keeping my brands up and I'm also peaking my DPS. And then when I'm moving into a new group, if I'm unable to cast new brands into them, I'm popping the labs and then using recall immediately. Why is it that I do that? Because when I pop the labs, it lets me cast my recall for free, which makes it so that I'm not resetting the timer on being able to recast a set of brands. So the hardest thing about this build is first of all, like, I just got my defense popped which basically, you know, I get this big shield, but it costs mana to do that, which prevents me from then casting. It puts me at my mana cap, which prevents me from casting new brands. I'm still able to use recall, but if you lose this, this ability to cast more brands too many times in a row, then what's going to happen is you're going to wind up in a situation where you can't, where you're going to run out of brands. We have the brand increased length, which makes it so that it's not as hard to keep brands up. But that's like one of the difficulties about it is, you know, if you're not paying attention to stuff like that, if you're playing careless, if you're positioning yourself bad, there's times that your DPS is going to be kind of stuck low, because our peak DPS comes when we're able to get off all 3 of our brands. And that's the reason why you can only move through a map so fast with this build, because obviously, you know, your ability to move through the map is highly dependent on your ability to recall. And that is the reason that it's not like ever going to be the fastest map, or the advantages of the build is it's like crazy tanky. Like, we have absolutely insane defenses, and it's really good for super high peak DPS, which, what is that really good at? It's really good at killing really big targets, because the only thing that's going to need, you know, 67 million DPS is something like Elder, Shaper, Cirrus, Tier 4 seeds on really high maps, things like that. Things that would take so much time to kill with a lower DPS that it's actually worthwhile to have that much DPS. And the combination of having a massive defense is also a very good thing for that. So you can see when I got the cast off, I'm unable to cast another brand, and my damage peaks because I got off a big mana cast, and I couldn't cast another one. You can hear me spamming it. There would be absolutely no added damage at any point during the way that I'm playing, because I'm spamming cast brand. Why? Why is it that you see after my brand gets cast, a massive peak when I can't cast another brand? Because it has added a massive amount of damage to that brand. It has added a massive amount of increased spell damage. Those theories would not have seen a giant spike in my damage like that when I cast a brand and then cannot cast another one. If I could have cast another brand, if I could have afforded to cast another brand, then me spamming like this would have immediately caused another brand to be cast. Since I'm casting like that, every single time I would never have a massive peak in my damage. This completely disproves all of these theories. It's plain and clear to see. And also, you can look at the damage of my second brand damage. It's not that impressive. It's actually close to what my Blade Vortex does. So if I was playing the build like that, I would have a DPS that would look a lot like my Blade Vortex's DPS, just not as smooth and not there all the time, which means an actually lower DPS, because I'm waiting to cast instead of casting the second that it becomes available and having an absolute peak DPS. Then I'm sitting in this like zone where I'm trying not to go over my cost, and it's just stupid. Don't play like that. Anyways, let's talk about the build where it is. I think I've proved my point. If you still don't believe me, then don't follow my guides, because I've clearly shown it. And if you want to believe something that has no supportive evidence over proof, over someone that's actually killed hundreds of Awakened Raid Series, I have people that all League have been having me kill their Sirius with my Archmage set up like this. So probably works if I've been able to do it hundreds of kills. I probably know what I'm talking about a little bit more than someone who doesn't understand how tooltip DPS works. Anyways, now that that annoying conversation is ended, let's talk about the build. Pretty much everything stays the same as far as these things. These can't change. You know, to get rid of the Archon. I mean, there is stuff that we could do. This socketed reduced mana reservation. We could go with like an enlightened crafted shield with reduced reservation on it. This is just this would just be a really big pain in my opinion. You could do it, and technically you could do it. There would be ways to get rid of this Prism Guardian Archon shield, but there's really no point. And why is there no point? My defenses and my damage are so high, there's really no need to. I mean, like, if you want to, like, super min-max this and you want to make this build really hard to make, then go for it. I'm not going to, though. The upgrades that I will make past this, and you guys can look at my, I'll post my account name. It's just BigPowner1. My account is always set to open. If you're interested in calculating my DPS and actually seeing my peak DPS, it's actually probably higher than 67 million now, because I think I did something. Oh yeah, I had been lazy and I hadn't added the increased criticals to my build. So if you want to calculate my DPS, my total mana cost for 3 brand casts, the first one's 734, then 2145, then 7300. So a total cost around, you could put in like 9,000. It's actually over that. If you want to add those 3 costs together, you could calculate the exact peak DPS of my build for yourself. If you're like, that sounds like a lot of DPS, I want to see it for myself, then go ahead and go calculate it. Anyways, combination of things for like end goals to get to this really crazy DPS. You're going to have Assassin's Mark. You could actually manual cast for more damage with the conductivity. I don't like manual casting. You are going to absolutely have to have Whisper of Doom. I am doing the auto cast setup because I don't want to have to be casting. I don't want to have to be doing my triple cast, casting labs, and then like positioning using this and using this. Like, I don't know, that's just me. You could actually get even more damage if you were to do that, because you're talking about the damage of the conductivity at 20s, negative 44, versus 32 on the level 8. So you could do that. I've got the increased conductivity curse, so I'm actually getting 41% on a level 8. With that increased curse effect, it's essentially adding close to 10% damage. Like 30% would be rounded up, 9%. It's 32, so it would actually be 9.6% increased reduction to the lightning resistances. And then we have the Wave of Conviction. This is definitely something you want to be using. The Wave of Conviction with added lightning damage. The reason why you have to have the added lightning damage on it is because we have physical damage, and it takes and bases what the debuff. It says exposure applies negative 25 to elemental resistance, matching the highest damage taken. So as you can see, it has 25% to fire, 25% to lightning, and obviously you can see the lightning's much higher because I have it linked to the lightning damage support. You could do curse on hit. You could do a link if you wanted. If you were only 100% going to use this for boss killing, you could do curse on hit, conductivity, added lightning damage, and conductivity, curse on hit, added lightning damage, and Wave of Conviction. You could do that link. This is going to be the better setup if you are using it for killing other stuff than just the boss. The reason why is because the only time we're actually using Wave of Conviction is on big bosses. So having this auto casting our conductivity is a really big advantage because everything that gets hit is taking that debuff. So the trade-off is you can have 32% just automatically applied, or it's only going to be hitting stuff that you manually cast that onto, and you're going to be gaining 12% debuff. The the build has so much damage, like I said, that I'm not worried about the 12% since I do only use it for bot. Well, that's not true. Like when I do high tier seeds, I would have to be manual casting to get the added damage to the smaller stuff when I'm clearing all that stuff out. The other thing, the main swap is the lightning penetration. I use the chain support for when I'm mapping. Obviously, it drops the damage a lot because it's penetrating. I haven't even switched to an awakened lightning penetration. This would actually add quite a bit of damage because the base lightning penetration, awakened lightning penetration, like I really should just buy one. Because they're so cheap at this point. I think they're like, yeah, like 30 chaos, and at level 1 it's 38% penetration. So, and it would, and then adding quality, it'd have another 20% increased lightning damage. So I mean, I've honestly just gotten really lazy with this build just because it kills what I needed to kill so easily. I mean, realistically, I can finish this build. I just haven't done it out of laziness. I've got plenty of currency. So I should just buy those things. Probably after this video, I'll probably just go buy that stuff because there's really no reason for me not to. um, the reason why I've gone for increased energy shield with increased stun and block recovery both on my gloves and my boots is the only real weakness of this build is when you're fighting stuff that has like streaming attacks. Because we have the shield, we can get stuck. Like we have a massive amount of energy shield, and we get the shielding from the arcane cloak. I pretty consistently am getting between 6 to 8,000 bonus shielding from the arcane cloak. As you saw, I was like 5,500 after taking a hit, which in order for the arcane cloak to get procced, I have to take cast when damage taken. I have to take 3,272 damage. So 75% of that would be like 15 over 1,600 damage off of that. So that shield that I got was for 7,000, even if I had only taken one hit, because 75% of that damage is taken out of the arcane cloak. So that initial hit, the very minimum in that proc that I could have gotten for my shield was 7,000 shield, which puts me at, like over 17,000 effective HP, not counting any of my reductions. So absolutely massive amount of defense. The downside is if you get caught in streaming attacks, you can get stuck. What do I mean by this? If there's like a row of attacks coming at you, because you're going to be blocking them, it can get you stuck because like the amount of time it takes you to recover, you're being hit by something else, and so you just get stuck in this I'm stuck recovering from attacks. So having reduced stun and block recovery in the build can wind up saving your character. So that's the reason why I prioritize the dual mod stun and block recovery with energy shield on my items. I did this last league. I've done it this league. Last league, I went a step further. I think I got stun and block recovery also on my belt, but that was also because I was using my Archmage a lot more for mapping. Now it's not as important because I'm really only using this for really big boss kills. But that's something to consider when you're putting together your gear. As far as the amulet, a good starting place is going for the Zopex. The reason why is because it gives us, I believe, the 73 mana is the equivalent to a. Let's check. I think it's equivalent to a tier 2 mana with 10% increased mana. So it's a really good starting place if you're going to craft your own amulet. I'm pulling it up. Okay, so mana. So 73 is So it's equivalent to a tier 2 mana with 10% increased mana. I can throw this up for you. Let's see here. This is on the amulet. So it's equivalent to a tier 2 mana. And then we also get that 10% increased mana. It's 2 stats. It's a huge gain for this build because we're getting damage, we're getting energy shield from our mana. We want to stack as much mana as we can get. So that's a good starting place for that gear slot. For myself, I've gone for I haven't finished this amulet. I still need to reroll the maximum energy shield. Ideally for me, I want to have a tier 1 energy shield, which we can get by just re-rolling defense for defense till we hit the tier 1. But even a tier 5 is 1 ES max higher than the crafted energy shield. The highest crafted energy shield only goes up to 30. The percent energy shield we want to craft on, it's the easiest craft on for the best gains that we can get. And the reason why is because if we look at the percentage max energy shield, the tier 1 only goes up to 22%. So to match the to even get better, we have to have perfect rolled increased max energy shield. So trying to get 2 defense stats like that to only gain 2% max energy shield, it just makes it a really easy way to craft it. Go for the Zopex, clear the other stuff off of there. Do the defense for defense till you get a tier 1 energy shield, and then craft on that 20% energy shield. The stuff on the bottom that you can go for would be increased intelligence. I chose to go for all attributes because I needed to pick up some more other attributes to be able to equip all my gear. That's also why I went for the citrine amulet base, because it picks up the 2 stats I need, strength and dexterity. This let me pick up a lot of strength and dexterity in one place, and the all attributes makes it so that I'm also still gaining damage and energy shield, because the all attributes, when I perfect roll this, will be 32 to all attributes, which you could obviously get a tier 1, but you have to be able to buy the base if you want something like this that already has the Zopex and the all attributes on it. So it might be hard to get those things, and we have no way of rolling on the all attributes unless we do like reroll suffixes, don't reroll prefixes. So the availability of getting this exact setup might be hard on just the all attributes, simply because that has to fall with that on there. Or like I said, you have to do a reroll that doesn't change your prefixes. The other 2 stats that I'm going to be going for, I've got now the tier 1 critical. The next thing that I'm going to be putting on there is going to be the crit multiplier, because that's just going to add a lot more damage. The end goal of this, we're really scaling our damage in 2 ways. One way, well, besides our curses, but the curses are leading into our damage. The way that my damage is really scaling a ton is getting that critical up and getting that multiplier up. The reason why is because we get a ton of added damage from just adding mana because of the Archmage support, and then we get a ton of increased spell damage from the Indignant. So those pretty much take care of those 2 things: added base damage, increased damage. Those 2 things are taken care of, so the best way to multiply that is with a critical hit chance and a multiplier. That's the reason why my damage peaks so high, is because I'm bringing all these things together. A 35% increase to my a perfect roll. Let's say I even hit a 30%. 30%. That's gonna be I believe my critical's like 90% right now. So 90% of 30 comparative to my multiplier, which I believe is about 300. This is going to be like a 9% increase to my base damage, and somewhere in the range of I don't know the exact amount. It's a massive increase adding that multiplier. You guys can mess around with the PoB if you'd like to see what that actually does. But those are going to be the best things to focus on as extra stuff to add. Is going to be the multiplier, getting the critical up, and then the multiplier, which is why we have to have the assassin's mark. There's one other way that you could do this. You could go to get your critical chance up. You could go with a more expensive option. It's really not needed, but you could go for the bottled faith. It's kind of like a historic low right now. It's the cheapest I've ever seen it, at 8 exalts. It adds a big base crit. So the base crit from this, with also the base crit from the Assassin's Mark, that would be a really big increase. It would make it really easy for you to hit that 90% plus critical hit chance. So that would be another option if you want to spend more on it, if you really want to min-max it and you're looking for other stuff. The question is, what then do you drop? For boss killing, you could drop the Cinder Swallow. Cinder Swallow really does nothing for me in boss fighting, so if I was going to be adding that to my build, which I may, just to make my damage even better, the Cinder Swallow really isn't doing anything for us in a boss killing scenario, so if you are trying to make this as good as possible for boss killing, I would swap out the Cinder Swallow for boss fighting with that flask. It is an expensive option and it's not needed, but it will increase your damage a lot. As far as the wand, this is pretty good, and I mean it's pretty much all that's needed. Add a bunch of mana, add crit chance, crit multiplier if you can. In this case, on my wand, I need to remove the cast speed and then add a spell crit. That would add a ton of damage for me. Well, it would get my critical hit chance even higher, which, 300% multiplier. If I can add 100% increased critical strike chance, if I can add, 4% increase critical strike chance, effective critical strike chance, then it's essentially going to be adding 4% of my multiplier, which 300%, that would be a 12% more damage. Because of the hits, which it hits really fast, more of those hits are going to be criticals, adding 300% more damage to my base damage. That's how criticals work. Other than that, I mean, I did crafting videos on the Assassin's Mark ring, how to make a really sweet ring like this. Check out that video if that's something that you're interested in. I don't know if I've done a video on this. If I haven't, I will go ahead and do a video on how to craft one of these. It's a pretty dope ring. And then we have 3 pieces that these can't change. Then Diggin, the Ivory Tower. Like I said, the Prism Guardian, you can get around it. You have to go for a reduced mana reservation shield, and then you would have to... actually, you can't even do that, because you'd only be able to get in... You could do RDR, because you'd need... Yeah, I don't even think it's possible. I don't even think it's possible. I'm sure there's like something you could do, but this is really the only way that you can get all of the auras in. Like, you would have to go with basically a completely different build to change this out. Now that I'm thinking about it, because you need the 25% reduced mana reservation. There's no item that gives you that big of a reduction. Even even the Enlighten, if we add, I think you would have to get it to a level 6, which the only way to get it to a level 6 is like socketed support +2, which then you'd only be able to get that much of a reduction to 1 gem, because you would have to have the blood magic support, the Enlighten. It just wouldn't work. It honestly just wouldn't work, and I can show you what I'm talking about here. So, alright, so even a level 7 doesn't reach 25%, it reaches 4%. So yeah, it's not possible. It's 100% not possible. So yeah, you have to have these 3 items. These are the bread and butter of the build. Talking about the tree, I'll put the PoB in there. This is the tree that I have wound up at. I am going to go for 1 more skill point. I'm at 93. I have 1 large passive here that will be my next point, which I think adds like 300 to 400 energy shield, just more energy shield, and recharge rate. Honestly, like if I needed the damage, I could totally like dump the... I could totally dump some energy shield. Like if I wanted to get even more damage, like I could totally give up some energy shield slots. I could totally go for more damage with cluster jewels. I had originally come up here to do cluster jewels, but once again, I mean, I'm kind of in a situation where the build is just so strong that I don't really have any need to make the build stronger than it is. It works so well as it is, but if you wanted to go even higher, you could get a really low number lightning damage. You could get the scintillating idea. There's the lightning the lightning pen with 20% mana. You could get the basically jewels a lot like I did last season. You could spend a lot in cluster jewels and wind up with a higher damage build. But you'd basically have to sacrifice like stuff that's just giving you energy shield. If you're looking for that higher damage, um, the Watcher's Eye that I'm gonna recommend, you want the gain 18% of mana's extra maximum energy shield. It's just such a huge boost. You're talking about in my build 2000 like 2000 2400 2400 energy shield. If you want even more damage, you could go for a dual stat with like lightning pen would be a really good choice, or all pen. If you're going with the flask, you could go for enemies on consecrated ground have increased critical hit chance. With spells, that would be another good choice. There's other options to add even more damage to this build. I don't know if I will because I'm planning to start my next build. Um, but the biggest thing is getting your build into a synergy. Once you have your 6th link that you can get off 3 casts, you want to be able to spend as much mana as possible with being able to get those 3 casts off. For myself, I've gotten to the point where I can cast 3 casts. And then I'm going to my labs, and then I can recall for free while my labs is up, which is letting me reposition and kill stuff. I'm keeping the Cinder Swallow basically because that gives me, like, if I start taking hits, it gives me mana and energy shield per kill. That's basically kind of like oh shit moments is the only time I'm really popping Cinder Swallow if I'm mapping. Um, so yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Um, if you guys have any questions, leave them. Otherwise, my path of building as the build is right now will be in the description. And always, my account is BigPowner, the number 1. So just BigPowner1. And that is always set to open. So if you want to see where my build is at some future point, you can always just log in and look at, where my build is at. Anyways, thanks for watching. Peace.